In 1462, a teenage prince inherited a frozen backwater the size of Delaware. By the time he died, his descendants ruled 1/6 of the planet's land surface. No empire in human history grew faster or weirder. This is the story of how Russia became Russia and why the method behind that expansion still defines what we're seeing on the news today. Ivan III becomes Grand Prince of Moscow in 1462. He's 22 years old. His kingdom is roughly 20,000 square miles, smaller than modern Croatia. To the east sits the Golden Horde, the Mongol remnant that's been extracting tribute from Russian princes for over 2 centuries. To the west, Lithuania and Poland are swallowing Orthodox Christian lands. To the north, Novgorod, a wealthy trading republic that treats Moscow like an irrelevant backwater. Ivan looks at this map and makes a decision that will echo for 5 centuries. He's going to take everything. But here's what makes this different from every other medieval conquest. Ivan doesn't build his empire through dynastic marriages or religious crusades or even brilliant military strategy. He builds it through something far stranger, a kind of geographical arbitrage that turned expansion itself into a self-funding perpetual motion machine. And once it started, it couldn't stop. Let me show you the mechanism. Step 1. Ivan annexes Novgorod in 1478. He doesn't just conquer the city, he deports 8,000 of its richest families, scatters them across his territory, replaces them with loyalists from Moscow. Then he seizes Novgorod's entire northern trade network, the fur routes, the access to the White Sea, the connections to the Hanseatic League. Overnight, Moscow's revenue triples. Step 2. Use that money to build a bigger army. In 1480, Ivan stops paying tribute to the Golden Horde. They march west to punish him. The two armies stare at each other across the Ugra River for weeks. Then the Mongols just leave. Not because Ivan defeated them in battle, because he'd grown large enough to make the cost of invasion unbearable. The horde fractures. Ivan spends the next century picking off the successor khanates, one by one. Step 3. This is where it gets fascinating. Every time Russia conquered new territory, it didn't stop to consolidate. It kept pushing, because the economic model only worked through continuous expansion. Think about the math. You've just annexed Siberia. It's filled with fur-bearing animals, sable, ermine, fox. In the 1500s, a single high-quality sable pelt sold for the equivalent of a year's wages in Europe. But there's a problem. You hunt out the best areas within a decade. Supply crashes, prices collapse, so you need new territory, always new territory. By 1600, Russian fur trappers are crossing the Urals. By 1639, they've reached the Pacific Ocean, 3,000 miles in 40 years. That's not a country, that's a resource extraction operation with a flag. Here's the economics that powered it. A typical Cossack expedition into Siberia cost roughly 5,000 rubles to outfit, 10 to 20 men, guns, supplies, boats. The yasak, the fur tribute they extracted from indigenous Siberian populations, returned 50,000 to 100,000 rubles. 20 to 1 return on investment, sometimes higher. As long as you kept finding new populations to tax and new territories to strip, the empire literally paid for its own expansion. But here's the catch that matters. This model required a very specific kind of governance. You couldn't give local populations autonomy. You couldn't allow independent merchant classes to emerge. You couldn't permit alternative centers of power, because the moment your subjects stopped being extractable resources, the whole machine broke down. So Russia developed what historians call patrimonial autocracy. The Tsar personally owned everything: land, people, trade routes. There was no private property in the Western sense, no independent cities, no powerful nobility that didn't owe its existence to the crown. Just an ever-expanding extraction operation with a single man at the center. And here's the really uncomfortable part. It worked. By 1700, Russia is the largest country on Earth. It's also desperately poor. Peter the Great visits Western Europe and has an existential crisis. His empire is a century behind in technology, administration, military capability. He forces through brutal modernization, builds St. Petersburg in a swamp using conscripted labor. Tens of thousands die in the construction. He wins wars, he gains territory, he drags Russia into European politics, but he doesn't change the underlying model. He can't. The empire's entire revenue structure depends on extraction, not production. Catherine the Great expands further, south into Crimea and the Black Sea coast, west into Poland. By 1800, the Russian Empire covers 8 million square miles. But here's the number that reveals everything. Russia's total GDP roughly equals France, a country 1/20th its size. Russia had land, it had resources, it had 40 million people. What it didn't have was an economic system designed to create widely distributed wealth, because the expansion model was never meant to enrich populations. It was meant to fund the state, and it only functioned if you never stopped growing. Fast forward to 1917. The empire collapses, not from external invasion, from internal exhaustion. World War I exposes how fragile the whole structure actually was. The Bolsheviks seize power. They promise to dismantle the old imperial system. Instead, they perfect it. The Soviet Union becomes a hyper-rationalized version of the same model. State ownership of everything, extraction of resources from the periphery to the center, suppression of non-Russian identities, continuous expansion of control. They even keep pushing outward: Eastern Europe, Central Asia, proxy states in Africa, the Middle East, Latin America. The ideology changes, the rhetoric changes, the core pattern doesn't. And when the Soviet Union finally runs out of room to expand, when the cost of controlling the empire exceeds the value it generates, the system collapses under its own weight. The largest country on Earth dissolves almost overnight. Now here's why this matters right now. Russia is still the largest country on Earth. 6.6 million square miles, 11 time zones, massive oil and gas reserves, timber, minerals, some of the world's most valuable natural resources. And it's still operating on a version of the same governing model. Power concentrated in Moscow, wealth extracted from the periphery, limited space for independent institutions or regional autonomy, an economy overwhelmingly dependent on resource exports. In 2014, Russia annexes Crimea. In 2022, it invades Ukraine. Western analysts call it neo-imperialism, revanchism, the desperate actions of a declining power trying to reclaim lost glory. But there's another interpretation. What if expansion isn't a choice? What if it's structurally embedded in how Russian state power functions? What if the empire never learned how to stop growing because the system was never designed to operate at a fixed size? Think about it. Most empires expand until they hit resistance they can't overcome. Then they stabilize, they adapt, they learn to generate wealth through innovation and trade instead of conquest and extraction. Russia has had 560 years to make that transition. It hasn't. Not under the Tsars, not under the Soviets, not now. Here's the question we're left with. Can a state built entirely on expansion learn to function without it? Or is there something about the specific model Ivan III created in 1462, the way he turned a minor kingdom into the largest country on Earth, that makes stability itself a form of crisis? That's not rhetorical. It's the actual strategic puzzle facing Europe right now. Because if expansion is truly baked into the structure of Russian power, then every border is temporary, every treaty is provisional, every period of peace is just preparation for the next push outward. And if that's true, we're dealing with not a rogue leader or a temporary deviation from norms. We're dealing with a 560-year-old pattern that has never once been broken. One man turned a dookie the size of Delaware into the largest country on Earth. 5 centuries later, the world is still trying to figure out what to do about it. If you want to understand how the world actually works, the systems and patterns that keep repeating beneath the headlines, subscribe to this channel. Because history isn't just what happened, it's why it keeps happening. Hit that subscribe button. More stories like this are coming. And if this made you think differently about something you thought you understood, leave a comment. I read all of them. See you in the next one.